What's up, y'all? Bill McNeil rocking the mic again, cold representing Rocket Fuel Malt Liquor. It's got the mad flavor that takes any situation to the next level. So when the party starts bouncing and the ladies start bumping, tighten up your flow with Rocket Fuel. Rocket Fuel Malt Liquor. Damn!
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. As many of you know, I do particularly enjoy the little newsletter type things that Rob Lombardi had been doing for Bleeding Cool. Looks like he's doing it for ICV2.com now, and he had one out this week about, kind of ordering on budgets and stuff like that. And I wanted to talk to my good friend Comics by Perch, who was not only a YouTuber, he is a retailer about to get back in the game, and what comic stores can be looking forward to like in the future. How you doing, Perch?
I'm doing great. Yeah, and I like Rob as well, and I like him on ICV too. It's a big step up.
I would agree. I think it's a better place for him. He normally has really good points, and he's kind of talking about the difficulty ordering. There's sometimes no rhyme or reason while certain titles just sell out immediately, and then sometimes you get stuck with the title. And he was talking about hey, I was not expecting March 2021 to be the best sales month in the store's history. Based on the pandemic shutdown, obviously things were coming back up, but there has been some unemployment and stuff like that. But I guess the stimulus checks really helped out, and people were buying earlier this year.
Yeah, I think that it did. I think that the stimulus check to a lot of people equated to kind of small purchases. It probably fit the sweet spot of comics, and I do think there's this for people. It's an interesting thing about comics. I think people are loyal to comics. People are part of the comics, for lack of a better word, community. They want these stores to survive. They want to help out. They tend to be very generous with their money. They, when you see GoFundMe's for shops, people immediately jump in and help. And I think, some money came in some people's hands. People knew that the retail sector had been battered. They were ready to help.
Absolutely. And he says we're entering in another period of uncertainty. I hadn't really thought about it, but he's right. More and more places are opening up. There's more vaccinations that are happening nationwide. Everything's kind of opening up now. We're getting big movies released once again. People are going on vacation. A lot of people had those vouchers where your trip got canceled. It's time to go cash them in, and people are going to start traveling. That's going to eat up some of the budget. So how do comic shops and plan for all this? Are people going to continue their buying habits?
Yeah, I think they won't. I don't mean it in a dismal way, but I do think there's this pent up demand and this desire to kind of, like I mentioned, help the community out and help your shop out. And now that things get back to normal, people are going to get back to normal buying habits, and that's going to that is going to change. Some of that excess cash is going to flow other places, and definitely stores are going to have to adapt to that.
Yeah, he specifically mentions, and I've heard this from Aaron Sparrow as well, who does dabble in the collectibles, trades. That collectibles have just been, moving like nobody's business. You can't even keep them on the shelf hardly. So that's another place that people's money has gone into, and obviously the back issue market blew up. A lot of that has to do with speculators kind of coming in. I guess they ran out of baseball cards, or whatever, to buy. Is it sustainable, I guess, is the real question.
Well, I think some of this will. What you hope, I guess, in all this is that there's people, who's buying all this material? Is it people who have always kind of wanted this collectible or trading card games, are going through a similar thing right now, tabletop games? Are these people who kind of always wanted to buy this and now they're getting their chance because they have some stimulus money, or maybe now's the time to support that shop, or whatever it happens to be? How many of these people are coming into the hobby new? I guess the big question is, has the audience grown, or has the existing audience just kind of bought things they wanted to buy? And that's going to really determine how the next year or two go. You hope it's grown. You hope some people during this pandemic, during everything else, fell into this hobby or fell into this space and said, here's something that I've been interested in, and now I can't go anywhere, so I think I'll read comics, or I think I'll play games, and they come to love it. That's what you hope. I tend to doubt that's a lot of the audience have been buying things, but you would hope so.
Yeah, because I've just noticed in my household here in the Philippines, you can't take your kids out. You're not supposed to take them into stores or anything anymore, or right now still. You can't buy alcohol. We've kind of been shut in. It's definitely changed our buying habits. It's changed the way that we shop for groceries. It's completely different than it was before the shutdown. Obviously, there haven't been any trips really for like a year and a half now.
You know, and so I mean, I think that's where you look at this and go, all right, if you see these reports of people who say, I haven't had a cold in a year and a half because I've been wearing a mask, and maybe I'm going to always wear a mask. And so that's an example of kind of somebody who's radically changed their behavior from the norm to something new. So how many of these same people are going to say, I used to get on planes and go on vacations. I used to do this or that. And now I'm going to stay home and I'm going to play games. I'm going to read comics, whatever else. Now, to be
because you're looking at that savings account and you're like, whoa, I didn't know I could save that much in a year.
Yeah. I mean, will people... Americans, I don't know that they have these moments of like, wow, I could save money and be more financially secure. I don't know that sums up too many people, but we'll see. We'll see how many of the habits have changed. My feeling is it will kind of be the opposite. As things open up, people can get back on planes and go back to Disney World, whatever it happens to be. They're just going to blow money like crazy. That's
a deeper conversation, Perch, because we've had this bottleneck where you have all this money come in. People can't really get out and travel, so it's just been stuck in their accounts. Once you fully open everything up and the money really hits the market, that inflation.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, those things are going to hit. And I think behavior will be, in people's minds, they'll be, I was trapped for a year and a half, and now I'm going to go out and have an extra special vacation and spend more money, buy first class tickets and buy the suite. And I think that's going to eat up, inflation. But I think some of the hobbies like comics, some of that stuff may suffer as a result.
Yeah, that's it's too bad. But as far as getting sick, I can tell you this. I haven't really been sick for a year and a half. I don't think it's so much my mask, and I do wear a mask every time I go out. I think it's because my kids don't go to school. They're not getting sick from other kids. Yeah, I mean, schools are disease centers, so yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely. And like maybe an enormous petri dish just brewing up the best cold you could ever imagine. Oh, it's disgusting. Everything's going from mouth to nose there. It's terrible. But I think you've also got a case where people are giving each other more space. I mean, for regardless of anything else, I do enjoy going to shops now, and people don't crowd in and rub up against you. Maybe it's just the stores I was going to. Yeah. Keep your hands to yourself, sir. Yes. So another piece of uncertainty out there, Perch, and we've discussed this, is we're finally getting up to it. Penguin Random House is coming online as the exclusive distributor of Marvel Comics. Diamond, they lost their DC exclusive, and then they lost it just DC period. They were going to distribute along with Lunar and UCS. Now we have Lunar only for DC. Obviously, Diamond still has the overseas stuff. They don't have Marvel anymore. They're going to be a wholesaler. What does Diamond survive this? Are they going to find a niche or a little nice little space where they can operate and maybe, find some areas where they can really excel, where other places are kind of letting people down? I mean, it's going to be tough. It's predicting the future. I don't see Diamond's not going to just vanish in the short term. I think they do have a lot of indie comics. They do have Image. They have others people who will boost them. They have parts of, they have the feelers out in the infrastructure, but they are going to have to change. And the tricky part is Diamond as a company has struggled with change. Whenever there's been kind of some momentum, some like Jeff Sun has done certain things and they've kind of been rolled back, and they've just never been able to really make progress on innovation. And now they're going to have to do it with kind of the gun to their head of, falling revenue and other things. That's never the time you really want to have to be forced to do this. I do think it's very rough for Diamond. I do think there's paths where they could be successful and they could find their own way, but it would require dramatically modernizing, changing their customer service, getting some other things going on inside their company. I mean, there's a lot there that I think they're going to really struggle with. So, I mean, I do think Diamond has kind of this slow bleed out for a while. And I just don't know who in that company is willing to take kind of some dramatic steps forward and do things very differently. And that's what it's going to take. I would be surprised if they don't try to capitalize on the excitement in the back issue market. If they could get their hands on a pretty decent stock of that, they could be shipping that out to stores, and selling it kind of like that.
There'd been talk. I mean, they had talked about doing that. That's been one of the plans on the table. I just think it's hard to do. And I think it's particularly hard to do. I mean, they've got two obstacles. One, to be really functional at it, they would need to have a very modern service, a very good inventory system, which they've struggled with. And the second is they've got to eliminate the perception that they they treat their stuff like garbage when they mail it out. I mean,
especially with back issues, you want the value that comes along with the grade. Exactly.
Now, I mean, I'm very confident if you're talking about a back issue that's high priced, they'd put it in the right material and it would be taken care of. I don't think the reality is that they screw that up, but their perception is that they take boxes and just kind of punt them out onto a truck. And I mean, that's going to give a lot of people pause to say, hey, I'll buy this back issue sight unseen from this company that I've struggled with quality.
So another thing, I don't think he specifically talks about this, Rod Lamberti, but it is something that I kind of gleaned out of it, is we've seen the number of comics being produced is ramping back up. They scaled down. Certainly Marvel is ramping up faster, it feels like, than DC Comics. And less titles, it feels like, probably helped the comic shops to load up on some of these, higher profile books and maybe order more and meet some demand that they normally wouldn't have. They would have had to invest some money in some of these lower selling, lower interest titles. Batman Fortnite, Zero Point being one. There was not enough comics ordered that, even though DC Comics made it returnable, tried to do what they could to encourage comic shops to buy more copies. But as they ramp up the level of production to where there's already too many comics being produced, there's far too many comics being produced. Something like a Batman Fortnite, if you have something with a lot of, fervor and people are ready for it and you've underordered it, what are you going to do? There's only so much money for these shops to spend.
Yeah, I think that's a major problem. There are too many books being produced by the big two. In particular, DC is, if you look at their September, they are ramping up faster and faster. But I mean, you look at them and you take a character like Batman, and how do you properly market each Batman story to an audience? How do you differentiate when you've got like 20, 30 Batman titles? And then on top of that, if you're trying to make Wonder Woman go, and DC is, because that's a character they would like a foundation behind, where's the breathing room for both investing and understanding how to push and market and position that title inside your shop when you're dealing with 30 Batman titles? It's a real problem. I don't know that a lot of customers necessarily see it, but retailers, there's a finite amount of time. You've got a margin thin business, and if you're getting 80 books from Marvel and you're getting close to 50 books now again from DC, plus all the indies. I mean, unfortunately, the people who all suffer are your growth potential, your indie comics, because you don't have any time to really look into any of that stuff after you've waded through Marvel and DC. And there may be customers coming into your store saying, I want this type of comic, and you're like, I've been in the blur of a Spider-Man crossover and a Batman crossover and Avengers book and all these things. You just, it's hurting themselves. They should do fewer books. I do think you're right. During a pandemic, they scaled back, and I think that was actually helpful. It helped shops and customers focus. And it's make fewer, better books, I think is something a lot of people would welcome. And I think the interesting thing about sales charts, I know we talked about it the other day, is I think they reflect that if you do fewer books, you actually can make more money because people are able to focus and champion and market your stuff better. And I think there's something to that.
Well, certainly people were discovering indies. We saw the sales spike on a lot of these key number one issues with high profile creators. And it seems like a lot of them have been able to keep the sales up. They didn't just drop, all of a sudden from 80,000 to 20. They maintained their audience because people were able to go and take a gander over there and be like, oh, this new Scott Snyder Noctera comic book with Tony Daniel, pretty good. Maybe I'll stick with it. Otherwise, they'd be buying Squirrel Girl or whatever.
For sure, I think it helps. Now you might say, well, why should Marvel? And part of Marvel's strategy of flooding the shelves is exactly to keep the indie market out. But I think it hurts Marvel as well. I think you get events that just come and go. You get less commitment to titles. I mean, I've been.
That's where the stars are built, Perch. You know, when somebody comes on a book and you're like, oh, I've always wanted to see that writer on that character. It's because they built that name, value up on the indie scene. That's where you get your talent.
Agreed. No, I mean, I think it helps everybody. I do think that Marvel and DC would be better served by not being so aggressive toward the indie market. I don't think it takes money away from them as much as they think, and I think it helps them in the long run.
Absolutely. So the last thing I want to talk about, we're seeing this a lot from DC, specifically new characters. We're starting to see it with Marvel as well. I guess the big one is Web of Spider-Man, where we got the introduction of Harley Keener that was in Iron Man 3 into the Marvel comic universe. These are hot books. You know, you got your key collector app that comes on there and everyone comes in and they just buy them. And all of a sudden you're out of them. What can DC and Marvel do to help shops out to know, like, hey, this is going to be a hot item? And should they even do that? Because nobody wants to go in there and there's no copies left. I wasn't buying it for the first appearance. I just wanted to read the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've seen this before a little bit, that during the collector and speculator market, we had this problem where runs were getting, there's this battle between people who are picking up first appearances and flipping them or just, for that purpose, and people who are, trying to complete their runs. And unfortunately, there's not too much people can do. It is kind of the trap of where we currently are with the industry and comics. And I mean, bluntly,
does Marvel want to say, hey, Harley Keener, who was in Iron Man 3, makes his first appearance? Now you spoiled the book.
Yeah.
That's going to get out, right?
And they want to say that. I mean, the problem is the publishers are motivated to just move books. So they don't inherently care if it's somebody completing their run, a lifelong collector, or if it's somebody trying to flip the comic. And it's short-term thinking, because you want to make sure your collectors are happy. Those are the people who are going to help you survive decade after decade. But they're going to keep spoiling it. They're going to keep doing stuff like this. It is why Marvel spoils the results of their events and things in USA Today. They're hoping for people to flip comics, and I mean, terrible practice, but that's what happens.
Well, interesting times. I think Rod brought up a lot of good points. There is going to be a link to the article in the video description if you want to check it out for yourself. Certainly had more to talk about than what we just covered, but we shall see. Things are opening up. People are going to be diverting their money from collectibles and whatever their hobby was that keep them busy during the pandemic time. Going to go on vacation, start going back to movies. We'll see if how much it changes the buying habits, Perch.
Absolutely.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.